those conflicts. Today, we have the honor and privilege of interviewing Tech 3 Frank Y.C. Ong, who was with the U.S. Army Field Artillery and saw service in Saipan, Leyte, and Okinawa. So we're going to talk to him about that and a lot of other things. It's nice to have you here today, Frank, and we look forward to your story. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, Frank, if we could start first, I'd like you to spell your last name for us, please.
It's spelled O-N-G.
And you pronounce it?
All
right, I hope I did it justice. Thank you.
Yes, you did.
Where were you born and when?
Born in Phoenix, Arizona, August 9th, 1925.
And Phoenix was a big city at the time, or had it?
No,
you've seen a great deal of growth since then?
It was a very small town, yes.
And what did your parents do in Phoenix?
My parents, they were grocers, came here. My dad came to the States maybe 1917 and settled in Phoenix, raised a family.
Where was he from?
He's from Canton, China,
Okay.
which I pronounce Guangzhou, China.
Okay.
now.
And what was his name?
His name's Henry Ong Sr.
Okay. And your mother's name?
She goes to Sophie Ong.
Okay.
Ma Lai Heng,
Okay.
Chinese name.
And the her maiden name or her name before she was married?
Yes,
That,
Ma Lai Heng.
okay. And where was she from originally?
From the China.
Okay. Did they meet in China
Yes.
and they were married before they?
Married in China.
Okay. Do you remember them talking about any of that, their childhood or their early years?
No, not much. They grew up in the village,
Mm-hmm.
and then my dad was fortunate to come to the States, and then later on he sent for my mother, and most of the children are born in Phoenix.
Okay. So there was a period of time when he was here in this country getting established and
Yes.
she stayed back. Was that a very common way to do things?
Yes, back in the old days.
And was a matter of money, economics was the principal
Yes,
reason?
economics.
Do you know what your dad did back in China before he came here?
Well, he was just did odd jobs as a young man,
Mhm.
just running around, and then, like I said, he was fortunate to be able to migrate to immigrate to the U.S.
It was difficult to find work, or at least work that paid well
Yes.
over there, I'm sure. Did he come directly to Phoenix, or do you know anything about his travels?
I believe he first came into Sacramento, and then came into Phoenix
So he would have sailed over from China.
from Hong Kong.
Uh-huh. Okay, and landed in
Would
probably.
be in L.A. or
Mhm.
I don't know if it's L.A. or San Francisco
Uh-huh. But migrated fairly soon to
to Phoenix.
Phoenix. Was there any other family or any particular reason why Phoenix that you know of?
Well, the Chinese people are very clannish, so there's some relatives that were in Phoenix, and one of the elders told my dad, come into Phoenix and trying to make a living and settle in Phoenix, open up grocery stores.
And I suspect that made the transition easier too, knowing other people
Exactly.
with similar
Right.
backgrounds and experiences.
Yes.
Do you have any idea how long it was before he was able to send for his wife, your mother?
No, not really. I would say maybe in a couple of years. Yes.
Quite a long time
Yes.
to be apart. And you say, how many brothers and sisters did you have?
There were 5 boys and 2 girls. the oldest and the youngest were girls. 5 boys in between.
And where are you in the order?
I'm the number 4 son.
Okay.
Okay.
And you say, were all of them born here, or perhaps?
No, my youngest sister was born in China.
Okay. Do you know anything about their parents, your grandparents?
Well, they're just villagers, farmers, and so on. Nothing, professional.
Did they stay in China, or did they
Yes,
eventually?
in China.
What kind of neighborhood do you remember growing up in Phoenix?
Well, we're next door in the Spanish neighborhood. Have a little grocery store, and the neighbors were Spanish people, which the family got very close together. As a matter of fact, most of our children were named after the neighbor.
Oh.
My older sister's name, Sophia, well, Sophie. And the Spanish people have the name Sophie,
Right.
Sophia. Then the next is Roberto, Frederico, Enrico, Pancho, Jose. So, it just happened that the neighbor have children, with about the same age and with similar names.
Did you work in the store as you grew up?
No, because I went back to China with a family when I was 3.
Okay.
And we stayed in Canton for 10 years. When war broke out, then we all came back.
Okay. So as to kind of get the timing straight, you were born in 1925, so about 1928, before the Depression, you went back with?
The whole family went back.
Oh, your father and mother and everybody?
Yes. Of course, my dad then came back. See, back then the merchants can be away from the state for less than 2 years. Otherwise, they would have to wait for a quota again. So as long as they come back within 2 years, they have no problem.
Did somebody keep the store while he was gone, or?
Yes. And the first store, my dad sort of inventory off to a relative. And then in the later years, when he went in business with his brother, and then they alternate, going back and forth, and they maybe every 2 years or so they inventory and turn the whole store to the sibling, and then went back to China. When it comes back, it's the other brother's turn, then they inventory.
I
and
see. Okay.
Just rotate around.
So that they have a chance to go back without losing their position, their
Exactly.
their visas or
Right.
rights to be here. Usually then we talk about growing up in this country, obviously during the Depression as you got older. You were in China at that point. Did it have an effect, or was there a noticeable effect there as well?
As a matter of fact, when we were small, we didn't know anything about depression. We were fortunate because the father was working here, operating a business. He sent money back to China. We had maids, we have servants, and we lived in a big house and went to school.
And the grocery business was good because even during the Depression, people still had to eat, and
Exactly.
it managed to do pretty well as a family business. So your position in China then was better than most. You would describe.
I'd say so.
What was the village or the town where you were?
We lived in Canton, which is a city, and even though the route is into the village, we did not invest in the village. My dad had properties right in Canton, and we lived there most of all the time really.
Until you were about 13?
13.
What do you remember about, how did you get around? What was travel like?
Well, we have rickshaws, mostly walk. Walk anywhere. Buses.
Bicycles at all, or?
We have bicycle, not for transportation, more for fun. When we were small, because we have other cousins living right in the neighborhood, so we just grew up have one big ball all together.
But people didn't generally own automobiles?
No.
the public transportation was? Buses?
Rickshaw,
Mhm.
rickshaw, walking, or taxi.
How about school? What do you remember about going to school?
Well, our whole family went to this school, which is not Brighton, but it was a national school and pretty hard to get into. And our whole family attended that school. I had grammar school, my brothers and sister went to high school. So,
Were there tests to get in, or how did you?
well, there's some tests, and I think knowing the right people. And my parents were fortunate enough to know the right people, and we got in. Others, that like our cousins, that went into the city schools or private schools. But ours is the national school.
So it was a public school in that sense, or?
No, we have to pay tuition.
I see.
And I can't tell you how much we pay, but there's a tuition.
What did you study? What?
Just general. Because I was in a grammar school.
Did you study English as well, though?
Toward the later years, we did touch on the English. But I'll say this, seems like the standard a little bit higher in China, especially in mathematics. Because when I was in 5th grade, we were doing almost like the algebra. And the higher, where they don't teach you until high school.
Yeah, 9th or 10th grade.
Yes,
Yeah.
So especially math is higher.
And when you left at the age of 3, you had begun to speak English?
No.
Spanish?
It's Spanish. My parents said, I couldn't speak English or, not well.
But how about Chinese, the language?
It's grew up in China because in our family.
Your family spoke.
Yes, we speak Chinese.
When did you learn English?
Well, after we came back, I really picked it up.
And coming back at 13, then you were about ready to go into high school.
No, as a matter of, because of my language, I started in the 1st grade.
Oh, really?
Because I could hardly speak English. So, of course, like I said, the math was quite a bit higher than here, and a cousin and I were in the same boat. We were in the 1st grade, so we asked the teacher to give us a little more advanced math. So the teacher put down multiplication and division on the blackboard for the 2 of us, while the rest of the students were doing additions and subtractions. And then one day the principal came by and he wanted to know what's going on. The teacher explained to him what's what. The next day, both of us were in the 5th grade. Our math qualified, but English is still
Yeah.
a little bad. So we had a hard time picking up English.
But you speak very well. It's.
Well, I imagine I still have some accent.
But I would compliment you on learning it. You've done well.
Yes.
This was in Phoenix,
Yes,
back in
right in
school.
Phoenix.
So just go on and continue to explain how you went through school. Now you're in the 5th grade. As you mastered English, you were able to move up.
Just progressive, gone. Right here to a question on December 7th. I remember we're in school. Of course, 7th is a Sunday in the U.S. So I remember Monday morning we have an assembly, and it came over the air that we declared war in Japan, and I remember that. And I was in grammar school then. Then went on to, because of have a late start in school, I finished the freshman in high school. Then I was drafted. And then I did not finish high school until after I came out. I graduated in Los Angeles.
So in 19, well, let's go back. You remember hearing about the attack on Pearl Harbor, the announcement being made. Did you know where that was and what that meant, or?
Yes, we knew it was in Honolulu. the extent of it.
Mm-hmm.
And our naval fleet were there.
Mm-hmm. Was your family attempting citizenship at the time, or what?
No, back then they're hard to be naturalized back then,
Mm-hmm.
pre-war years. And,
Mm-hmm. Was there a reaction because of the war issue in your neighborhood or in the community?
No, as I remember, there was not too much discrimination
Mm-hmm.
in a small town.
Mm-hmm.
And we being Chinese and in the grocery business, you mingle with the people and we were treated pretty fairly.
Mm-hmm. And you were eager then to, well, I don't want to say eager, but you realized that there would be military service, or?
Yes, yes.
And were your brothers involved as well?
Yes, as I said, there were five boys. 4 of us were in the service.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we were the first 4-star family in Phoenix at the same time, 4 brothers.
Mm-hmm. Now, explain what you mean by 4-star family.
So each family, or every family that has a son or daughter in the military, they display a small flag with a star in it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 2 military people, you have 2, and we were able to display 4 stars.
Mm-hmm. And they put those in either in the window or they hung them.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Do you know about anything about the war experiences of any of your brothers? What their service was?
Yes, my number 2 brother and number 3, both of them were in the cadet program, and then the number 2 brother went on to become a bombardier. He instructed the Chinese cadets in New Mexico. And my number 3 brother, he became a radio gunner and served in a European theater. And he was a POW. And I was in the Pacifics.
So, okay, let's talk about your military training then. When you were drafted in
43.
Around October?
Yes. So before I was drafted, I worked at Luke Field, the Air Force, Air Corps base then. So when I was drafted, and after the test, I qualified to become a cadet. In other words, to join the cadet corps. But I said I want to become a ground crew. I want to be a mechanic. So not knowing that if you washed out as a cadet, you would go into become a ground crew or a radio man. So they put me into the infantry, and I took my training as an infantryman in Camp Roberts.
Okay.
And then I went overseas. I was transferred to the field artillery and signed on to the aircraft, the air section. We work on the Piper Cup, the observation plane, and the field artillery.
Where was Camp Roberts?
Right in Paso Robles, in California.
So, and that was your basic training?
Basic training.
Do you remember how long that lasted?
5 or 6 months. Yes, because on May 1st, went in there in in October, and the country told us, you guys gonna be on your way into the war in May. We all laughed at them. May 1st, we left Oakland, that pier, to go into the Pacifics.
Now, what kind of training did you have?
I was infantry, rifleman.
That's all
Yes.
you.
Right.
No experience with the aircraft or.
No, well, the background was working at Luke Field, working in the Air Force as a mechanic's helper.
Had you flown at all?
No, not as a pilot. I've flown in the plane with the pilot and the test flights.
While working at Luke?
No, overseas.
But prior to that, you had not flown at all. Do you remember now why you might have decided that you didn't want that cadet program, or?
Well, because always a mechanically inclined.
Mm-hmm.
My interest was in the mechanical things, and so didn't want to be a pilot.
Yeah.
Not that I was afraid or anything,
Yeah.
but just that my, goal was to be a mechanic.
That was where your interest,
Right,
yeah,
yes, sir.
yeah. How did that develop? Do you know, where did your interest in mechanics come from?
I really don't know.
Was it something you could study in school, or?
No, not specialized in that. It just, I don't know, within me, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So you were at Camp Roberts until May 1st?
No,
Yes.
it's actually April. Then we have 30 days,
leave.
leave.
Mm-hmm. And then on May 1st, you had, after the leave, then you had to report to Oakland?
No, went to Angel Island, Fort McDowell.
Okay.
A lot of people didn't know there was a fort there.
Mm-hmm.
So went to Fort McDowell, and then let's see, I think Fort McDowell. Then we boarded the ship. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What kind of ship was it?
Liberty ship. I think those are transports.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember how long it took?
No, I don't. From here to Hawaii.
Okay.
Imagine a week, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any idea where you were going?
No, we, and then from Hawaii, I was transferred to the artillery and then sent off, and there was talk about New Caledonia. Everybody thought we were going to Caledonia. We didn't know about it till we were approaching Saipan in the Marianas.
So it was in Hawaii that you were actually switched from.
The infantry.
Did you spend some time there, or additional training?
No. When I was there, when they transferred me, roundabout ways, I was off the roster. They didn't know. They know my name, but they didn't know what I was supposed to do, and so the first few days I get up with early, and then they didn't call my name. So for a while I just stayed in bed. And finally they got me set up. They gave me a mosquito net and a helmet, and I was on the way to war. No rifle, no nothing. And they still didn't know what I was supposed to do on the ship. And finally we landed in the Saipan, and they said, "You're with the air crew." And that's
During your basic training and the transport over there and all that, how were you treated by the other soldiers?
good. Well, good comradeship.
There was no issue of nationalities,
No,
or
sir, not at all.
and I mean, at that point, I guess everybody was a patrioot and had
Everybody brothers in arms.
yeah, and that's kind of nice. I think
Yes, sir.
it's
Wonderful.
it's too bad we can't be like that, perhaps more often now. When did you learn that you were going to Saipan?
I didn't.
Not until you got there,
Yes,
right?
right.
And then what happened? What?
Well, in Saipan, then we're attached to the Marines for that invasion. Our air group, see, the field artillery used to be the coast artillery, converted to field artillery for the counter-offensive. So that is why, in the transition, my name didn't get on the roster. And we operated off the taxiways with the Air Force, the Air Corps then. And we have our own, we have royal treatment. We have people sent in to do guard duty, do kitchen. We have our own kitchen, and because we have the pilot and the air crew, we have to keep the planes, in top shape. So all the pilots were just regular fellows, and we just call each other by name. And one day a general came by, he demanded, I said, "Hey, we have to have discipline." And then our pilots said, "No, they can't do that. If they're working on a plane, they can stop and salute,
Yeah.
So the general finally said, "Well, tell you what, we'll settle on the first time you see the officer, you salute." But the pilots are they're regular fellows.
What was your job at that?
I was
at
a
that-
mechanic. It's A&E.
And what kind of training did you have for that?
a lot of that would be on the job training.
Mhm.
And the L4 is a relatively simple plane to maintain.
Mhm.
And they come apart, you know, and we assemble them from the crate, check that out, and test flight it.
Okay, now, so explain, where exactly are you at this point?
Age-wise?
No, geographically.
Oh.
Where are you located?
Oh, in Saipan.
Okay, and again, we don't have a map here, so kind of explain.
Okay, Saipan is in the Mariana chain. More people hear of Guam than Saipan. Or Tinian, which is 2 miles away from Saipan. And Tinian is where the B-29s were stationed, and there's where the atom bomb was flown from. So Saipan is with the Mariana chain of islands.
And by the time you got there, it was pretty well secure?
No, we're in the early part. As a matter of fact, when our group got to Saipan, we only have a small beachhead, and then there was the Japanese, the counter-offensive. We landed, and then they sent reinforcement over, and so our fleet took off again and came back a few days later to land in Saipan.
Okay. What was there besides an airfield? Were there facilities? Were there barracks?
On the Saipan is known, just small villages. By the time we get there, it was pretty well bombed out. Yes.
By both sides? In
Mostly US,
the
yes,
attack back and
right.
forth? Perhaps now would be a good time to then talk about the aircraft. Go ahead and use this pencil to whoever. You say, first of all, these arrived in crates?
Yes, they shipped over the main bodies in one, then the wings on either side of a crate, and then of course the struts and so on, they were all apart. We have to put them together, and then after everything is put together, we have to rig it and check it out, and then for pre-flight.
And what kind of aircraft is this?
It's a Piper Cub. We refer to it as an L4, Liaison 4, whatever that means.
Okay.
And the purpose of the planes, the pilots here, the observer, the artillery observer, he's the one that directs the artillery fires. In the European theater of operations, the grounds were more flat, so they can see the targets. But because of the islands, the terrains are very mountainous and full of growth, a lot of times they have to fly almost over the target before they could direct the fires. And we heard many times the artillery shells were fired over them. They have to be here, and the fire, the shells would land over them, so they can direct to and where to go.
And they're in radio contact from the plane with the artillery batteries?
Right.
Was it mostly ground artillery or ship?
From ship too. Yes. I think most of those would be from the ship coming in.
And this was aimed at other islands in the chain?
No. Saipan, the island is only 16 miles long from one end to the other. And we were attached to the 155 rifle, which can shoot 16 miles away. So they can shoot from one end of the island to the other. And then we also have the 155 howitzer for closer range to shoot up and down. The rifle is for long range. So they're directed the field artillery on the ground. I was mistaken about the ships, but they do have contact with the ships if they need to from the other angle.
Now, how many planes were in a unit or?
Each mechanic, we have 2 planes. I imagine we have about 8 or 10 in our group. And we have 2 air groups. each group then divided into a section, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And one mechanic and a helper took care of 2 planes.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 pilots and 2 observers.
Did you ever fly in?
No. Though taxi,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Uh-huh.
after the repairs, you know, we taxi around to make things, you know, work.
Mhm.
And then the pilot would take us up for test flight to see what needs to be done and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that's interesting about this plane, it's made of, looks like a metal tubes,
Mhm.
tubing,
Mm-hmm.
and fabric cover with fabric and doped over with this dope, and just layers and layers of dope.
Mm-hmm.
And the manual says you do not reuse any cotter pins, which would be a locking device for nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But because there was a shortage, we have to reuse the cotter pins or use whatever metal pins we could use to secure the nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, to repair, we're supposed to use fabrics for repair, but there's short of fabric. So many times when the planes come back that is damaged,
Mm-hmm.
we just use masking tape it over and just put layers and layers of dope over it,
The
and the
compound.
planes still fly.
Huh.
Yes.
What kind of damage would they normally encounter? What?
Sometimes, not so much anti-aircraft, it's the ground fires. Yes.
More small arms.
Yes.
Because these would have to fly fairly
Fly
low.
very low.
Yeah.
Mhm. Many times the pilots and observers, they get shot. One of my pilots was shot, and one of my observers was shot.
Mm.
Of course, they both came back and continued the war effort.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is an area of the use of aircraft that we don't hear about a lot. We've interviewed a number of bombers and navigators and that kind of thing, but this is a pretty specialized unit. Do you have any idea how many units there were like this in the Pacific, or?
No, I really don't.
Do you think like every island?
No, this would be attached to the artillery.
Mm-hmm.
See, we're technically with the field artillery.
Mm-hmm.
Then we are referred to as the the air section, where we
I
have
see.
the pilots and the mechanics.
Mm-hmm. Did you have anything to do with the artillery itself?
No, mostly with the aircraft.
Mhm. How often did they do this? You said you were responsible for 2 planes. How often would they be used? Every day?
Daily.
Or?
Oh yes, daily.
So
Sometimes
it was
they go up, come back, and refuel, and
go up again.
depending on the operations where it's needed.
Mhm. How about the security of where you were stationed?
Well, we are stationed mostly close by the Air Force or the Air Corps at that time,
Mhm.
because we either have our little dirt airstrip or we operate off the taxiway of the Air Corps,
Mhm.
because it doesn't take much room to get the plane
take
airborne.
off. Yeah.
Right. Mhm.
But you were obviously close to combat, so.
Oh yes.
Um,
In the island, there was no, we're up front most of the time.
Did you experience any fire, or were you ever?
Yes, I'm ashamed to say that. First landed in Saipan, we were staying, like I said, we were with the artillery. We have our own section, and we were able to stay near the bunker where the Japanese, I guess, they used the bunker to the air raids.
Mhm.
So we used that at night. It's one door in the middle. It's almost like a wiener. One door in the middle, that's where you go in, and one escape door on the other side in the back.
Mhm.
And then they have little benches, there's where you sit or sleep.
Mhm.
So in the early days I was there, and I slept through a bonsai attack. I was so tired, or maybe scared, and I
Yeah.
was asleep, and I remember vaguely the public shoving me, come on, get out of there, you know. I just slept through it. They were firing outside and damaged a couple of planes. And then next morning we came out and say, lucky you didn't come out, we would have shot you. And then as far as the front line, we were pretty close to the front line, if you want to put it that way.
So you had to be on your guard. Did you post guards and things
Yes.
like that?
Yes, when we got settled, then the field artillery, they sent people over to do the guard duty for us, because the pilot said they cannot stand guard duty
Right.
and work on the plane during
Right.
the day. So we have minimal guard duty, and then they send people over to cook for us. We have our own kitchen, so we're pretty exclusive.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have a weapon?
Yes,
What did you?
we carried the carbine,
Mhm.
the 30 caliber carbine.
And
But
did you?
I qualified as an expert Koran, a rifleman.
Mhm.
That's how I qualified.
Did you have to keep it with you at all times?
Yes, we have it available.
So when you're working on the aircraft,
It's always close by.
and did you have hangars to work in, or were you outside, or?
No, it's pretty exposed.
Mhm.
Yes.
And you talked about supplies. Parts were hard to get. How did you get what you needed?
Well, the supply sergeant, they do have there's a supply sergeant. He, requisition the needs, and they either fly them in or truck them in, and then. But there's not that many parts to be replaced on these planes.
But when you talked about the supplies to fit, like the cotter pins or the
Yes,
supplies to
those
fix
small
the,
things, right.
yeah, you.
But as far as the engine, if we either replace the whole engine or just dump it.
How long would one of these planes last?
It's hard to say.
Um,
Depends circumstances. They're a good little plane. Like you said, how long will it last? It'll last forever, I think.
as long as it
Yes.
didn't get shot up.
You're right.
Yeah. Would you replace engines and that kind of thing if that became necessary, or would you just be easier to do to put together a new plane?
Fortunately, we didn't have to do any total engine replacement. We did repair them, say crown off the valves and so forth. But all in all, it's the maintenance is pretty maintenance free.
So you had tools to do those kinds of things,
Yes.
machining.
Not machinery, just hand tools.
Hand tools, okay.
Necessary tools.
Anything else about your service on Saipan before we move on?
No, not much. That's just
How long were you there?
I can June, I think maybe about 6 months. Because from Saipan went to Leyte,
Okay.
and I can't remember when we went to Leyte.
But you arrived in Saipan around June of
44.
1944, and did you have any idea what was going on elsewhere, either in the Pacific or in Europe?
Oh yes,
You
because here's the Guadalcanal,
Mhm.
New Caledonia, and those Talaki.
How about D-Day, the Normandy invasion?
Oh, that's down the road.
Yeah. Did you get news of things like that though?
Oh, we did.
How about mail? Communication with your family.
We have a good. We use the email, not email, V-mail.
V-mail,
Victory
yeah.
mail. Yes.
And you had to be careful about what you said.
Right, and they censor them, and but there's not too much to say except that you don't tell them where you are, what outfit you're with, and that's all. Just getting along. And
Yeah. Did they get those letters fairly timely, or did it take quite a while? Do you know?
we got the. To me, it seems pretty timely, considering once you get on the island, you don't have to wait for the island to be secure before you start getting mail. See, as long as we get a good beachhead, have a good setup, then we start getting mail.
Did you ever have any contact with any of your brothers?
No, because one of my brother was in the state, is in New Mexico, instructing the Chinese cadet.
Mm-hmm.
The other brother was in the European theater.
Okay.
My oldest brother, he came in last because he had a family, so you know the drafting
Mm-hmm.
procedures. He was the last to go in,
Mm-hmm.
but he had a little medical problem. He was the last one in, first one out.
Oh yeah.
But luckily, he served more than 90 days, so he qualified as a veteran and
Good.
got the benefits. And that's how we get the 4 stars in the family.
Well, that's quite remarkable, anyway. So when you left Saipan, then what did you do? What happened?
We went on to Leyte.
Mm-hmm.
We knew we were going to the Philippines, but we didn't know which island
Mm-hmm.
till we get close to Philippines.
Yeah, and Leyte is exactly where in relation to something.
It's south of Luzon,
Mm-hmm.
north of Mindanao, I believe. It's right there. It's sort of in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
among the 4 islands, 4 big islands.
And you went by ship
Yes.
with all your equipment, or?
Yes. That's, of course, when we transport on the ship, that's when we have to take the planes apart,
Mm-hmm.
stow our gears away, pack them up in the crates.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we get there, then we unload the plane and put them together again.
Mm-hmm. Did you go with the artillery as well, or?
Oh yeah, we do travel together.
Mm-hmm. And when you landed at Leyte, what was it like?
On the beaches, you don't see really a palm tree, really standing. Everything is shot away,
Mm.
just the stumps right there. And it was barren, and it was pretty sad.
Mm.
But we got there, and we have a good beachhead. So we settled down and went to work.
How did you actually get ashore?
And Leyte, if I remember, we got on the amphibians.
Mm-hmm.
Those the ducks, they call them.
Okay.
The 2.5 ton amphibians.
Mm-hmm.
We transport that way, of course. And I don't know how the planes and the crates got on, but they were, got on the beach,
Mm-hmm.
then towed to the airstrip or something, and then we, assemble the plane.
Mm-hmm. Would the ducks take the equipment as well, do you think?
No,
or?
the ducks are personnel,
Okay.
and I imagine the trucks or some other, would handle the heavy work.
Mm-hmm. So, but with the ducks, you could roll right up on the beach. You didn't
Yes.
have to jump out in
No.
water over your head or anything like that. What do you remember about Leyte then, in terms of your service there? What did you have to do?
Well, of course, after the island was more secure, went into Naha, which was the capital of Leyte, and seems like there's not a building standing.
Mm.
Seems like the building was taken up brick by brick. They're just single bricks laying all over.
Mm.
Few places there's some maybe chimneys or so on, but otherwise it's just a mess, like a brickyard.
Mm.
Bunch of bricks laying around. There's no city left.
Mm. How about the people?
No, we didn't see it. We do have the Filipino. They come to the camp. Sometimes they come and help wash and do a little work. But in our group, we didn't have many.
Mm-hmm. But were there contact with the civilian population at all, or had they gone?
No, they're around, but we don't have much contact. Not with our group.
Mm-hmm. And Leyte is a bigger island than.
It's a long island. It's not the biggest. I think Luzon is bigger.
But it's
And
bigger than
you know-
Saipan.
Oh yes, much bigger.
So you had a landing strip there, or an airfield that you
Yes.
worked out of.
Right.
Were the conditions there better than Saipan, or
Oh, much better. And
more secure?
I would say so. Yes.
How long were you there?
I don't remember when we landed there, but then we left Leyte for Okinawa on D-1, April 1st or March 31st. We landed 5 miles from Okinawa, so D-1. We landed there.
And this would have been in March of 1945.
Yes.
And the Okinawa was in the chain of islands leading up to
the Japanese islands.
It was Okinawa and then
Iwo
Jima.
Right.
Was it secure at all, or?
No, we encountered the heaviest artillery fire in Okinawa. When we landed, we set up the artillery, our group, 5 miles away offshore from the main island. And they use psychological warfare. Every night about the same time, they have 2 artillery firing into the island. And one would land on the island, the other one overshoots, and so we gauge it when to, stick our heads out to work on the planes and so forth. Seems like every other one is missed the island. So we were bombarded, but we returned fire.
Now, when you say set up offshore, what?
Well, on a smaller island. Our group, we call it D-1 on the Okinawa campaign. We did not really set foot on Okinawa till much later, because we were 5 miles offshore, and this island was to set up artillery on the south side.
And did you use the observing?
Oh yes.
Where did they? So this island was big enough to have it had a small airfield, or?
Yes, airstrip.
Did that have to be repaired, or was it?
No, no damage to the runways. Though the Japanese, they did send suicide troops trying to take the island, but they were repelled.
Did they come in by plane, you mean, or?
No, they're Saipans.
Oh.
Yeah.
Who would have built the airstrip in the first place?
I really have no idea. Could be the Japanese. Or could be the. I don't think it's the Marines. Not the Seabees, because when we got there, it was in operations. So it must be there. Otherwise, we would not have landed there to utilize the airfield.
And your duties at this time were about the same. You were working on
always with the
on the aircraft,
right.
And of course, as you say, the first thing you had to do was uncrate them again and reassemble them.
Yes.
And again, you say you learned a lot of that kind of on the job.
Yes.
Did the other people, were they?
Well, I was working with a crew chief. That was so-called the helper, so-called, but we done everything together. So just pick it up real fast.
And they had been trained
Yes.
prior to that.
Right.
Were there other people in your unit who kind of got there like you did by accident, or were you?
No, I think a lot of them were graduated from Fort Sill, Oklahoma. That's where they have the
Artillery.
the observation plane outpost. Of course, I got there because they converted from coast artillery to the field artillery. They needed personnel, and with my background at the Duke field, they thought I would qualify, and so they put me in there.
Were there losses in your unit?
Yes. I lost one of the master sergeants. As a matter of fact, that's the day that we were to leave Saipan for Leyte. He was flying between Tinian and Saipan, and he was shot down. And we lost the mechanic. The pilot survived, but the mechanic died.
And why didn't they just fly these planes from one place to the other?
from island to island.
Yeah.
The range.
They didn't have the
No,
capacity.
no.
What would be the range of?
I can't remember, but I would take about 10, 12 gallons of gas,
Mhm.
and it'll stay up for a few hours. That's all.
Mhm.
It's a 4-engine opposed, Continental opposed, about 60 horsepower.
Is when you describe that as a Piper Cub or a Piper,
Cup.
yeah, size-wise, is it similar to a two-person plane today?
Yes, they still have them around,
Mhm.
the Pipers,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think they would have made them out of fabric now. Okay, and then toward the end of the operation in Okinawa, we did switch over to the Stinson 105,
Mm-hmm.
which is a bigger plane. It's a heavier plane.
Is that it?
Something like that. The Marines use the Stinsons,
Mm-hmm.
and because they were more efficient than the Piper,
Mm-hmm.
so we switched over to the Stinson one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a faster plane, bigger plane.
But essentially, the task was still the same,
Same,
was to
right.
direct the artillery fire from
Exactly.
one point to the target. Was this day or night, or did it matter?
No, just day,
Mm-hmm.
because that does not have a night capability.
Mm-hmm. I interviewed someone probably 2 or 3 weeks ago that landed on Okinawa, and they said that a lot of the fighting by the Japanese was done at night. Did you find that to be true as well? Were you harassed at night?
No, I imagine because they do that at night because of the U.S. manpower.
Mm-hmm.
They were all dug in the caves.
Mm-hmm.
They have a big network of caves,
Mm-hmm.
So they hide the caves. They don't go in. They go in and twist and turn. So even you fire into the cave, you would miss them until they come out.
Mm-hmm.
So they hide there during the day and come out and arrest or fire the U.S. troops during the night.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, even though we encountered heavy artillery fire, they were very primitive. When we finally landed on the Okinawa, we realized why we were being fired on from these two guns. They have like a T. They have a artillery here and one here, but one opening. What they do, they push the artillery gun here, they fire, they pull it back to reload while the other one comes out. So somewhere along the line, the alignment
Gets out.
mixed up, but somehow it always seems like every other one hits the island, the other one misses the island.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on just wooden spokes and just a big metal
Mm-hmm.
tube,
So you were on Leyte for a few months, perhaps,
quite
or
a few months, yes.
and then you went to Okinawa in March or early April of 1945.
Yeah, we landed -1,
Mm-hmm.
which the operation date was April 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that it's April Fool's Day.
Mm-hmm.
So we were, I imagine we were on the high sea maybe about a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. And when you then landed in Okinawa, again a similar
Yeah.
similar experience.
Right.
What did you do there?
We just still, then we operate off the south end of the island,
Mm-hmm.
direct the artillery fire.
Mm-hmm. And did you know what was going on in the larger area at the time, or did you have ways of finding out news?
We have some news, but really not that much interest in other places,
Mhm.
except for where you are,
Mhm.
how we're progressing.
Mhm.
We knew we were in Iwo Jima,
Mm-hmm.
and of course we knew the Philippines and the Saipan and the bombing run from Tinian.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the extent of it. But
Had
Yes.
you begun to hear about the possibility of the use of the atom bomb?
no, we didn't know, or at least I didn't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Did you see going overhead American planes or other planes?
Oh yes, because we operate near the airfield, so we can see a lot of
Mhm.
activities.
Mm-hmm.
The fighters and the bombers and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And Okinawa is about.
The island, I believe, is about 60 miles long.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how wide, but it's a long island.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any idea how far it is from there to Japan?
No, I don't. Not
Because I think they talked about Iwo Jima was about.
It's closer.
Yeah.
Much closer.
Mm-hmm. You were then on Okinawa for how long?
Until the end of the war and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
I was mustered out in the early part of 46.
Okay. We've got a couple more minutes on this tape. Talk a little bit about then your experiences as the war ended. How did you find out? What happened? What difference did it make?
As a matter of fact, before the war ended, a buddy and I, we sat down and BS around, said the war is going along so good and that we're going to be going into Japan, but because of the Canton Army, which Japan's crack troops were in China, said even if we went to Japan and took the island of Japan, the Canton Army would continue fighting. We were looking at maybe 2 or 3 years more fighting, either on the island or in the mainland China to get rid of the Japanese. And then of course then when they dropped the atom bombs and everything came to an end.
What are your thoughts about the use of the atom bomb?
I have mixed feelings. To me, it saved a lot of lives on both sides. The number at one kill is terrible. But then if you think about the fire bombing of burning down Tokyo, there's hundreds of thousands of people burned alive too. So it's not that bad. War is war, and it's a terrible weapon, but it's a means to bring the war to an end.
And I think in the people I've talked with, there doesn't seem to be much doubt that there would have been significant losses had we not done that, again, on both sides.
Yes.
So that, it was probably something that ended it more quickly than...
Yes, as we learn now from watching the History Channel, not knowing the advancement that Japanese have. They are developing jet fighters. They were working on atomic bombs too. If we didn't drop it on them, if they got the upper hand, the things would be not turned around.
Yeah. Let me take a minute and switch this. We're talking about your...
The next morning, we...
I want to ask you though,
Okay.
okay, you got your gun there. What kind of defense do you have for your gun? I mean,
we set the gun up facing inland. We had set up the night before.
And before we landed on the Saipan, he was shaking all over. His tongue going short. They were shooting because he himself looked more Japanese than Chinese. You know, narrow face and sunken cheeks. I said, "No, you're with the American troops. They'll take care of you." And we lived through it. But we didn't encounter any racism.
But do you think it might have just put you more at risk? I mean, just because of the confusion and...
It's possible. Of course, of being naive, I remember I went on the beach in my little fatigue, and look, picking up shells. I could very well have been shot, but that never came, crossed my mind.
Yeah,
I just one of the boys, and
Mm-hmm.
no problem at all.
Frank, I'd like to talk a little bit about your life after the service, but is there anything else regarding your service that that you think we've left out or haven't asked you about?
No, but I felt that it's an honor to serve in the military, to promote democracy and keep freedom alive in the United States and throughout the world.
Well, and we certainly all appreciate the sacrifices that you went through. You had written here you were discharged in January of 1946.
Yes.
Explain how did that come about? What after Okinawa?
Yes, that's the what the reduction in force, so-called, And I was approached, said, "You're a Tech 3, you sign on 6 more months, we'll make a Tech Sergeant out of you." I said, "Thanks, no, I want to go home." So we waited our turns, and based on the length of service and the point system.
That's okay. I was
Right,
going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so my turn came, and I was back home in January 1946.
Now, did you stay in Okinawa during that time, or
Yes, from the Okinawa was the last place.
what did you do in those couple of months waiting?
Well, after I qualified, then we went into the so-called staging area and just hang around and wait for the ship to come in, so-called.
So there were a couple of issues. One was the point system that determined who had priority to go home,
Right.
and then it was the availability of a ship to take
Right,
you
transportation,
take you
right,
home. Did you have any other responsibilities as far as equipment or anything like that, or was the unit broken up at that point?
No, it was in operation, even after we left.
What were they doing?
I really don't know. They were still doing recon work, I believe. No more enemies to shoot at.
Yeah.
So
But you did not consider staying in the service then?
no, sir.
Okay. Where did you come back when you were discharged? Where were you discharged from?
Fort MacArthur
Which is
in Los Angeles. Is
okay.
that Long Beach or thereabouts?
Yeah, in that area. And then did you go back to Phoenix?
Yes.
And what did you do?
Well, hang around and relax some, and then went back to school a little bit, and then went back to finish high school in Los Angeles. One thing I like to say about that, our family, when we were mustered out, my dad said, "Well, something to remember all of you by." He got 4 diamonds for us, made us diamond rings. Each one have a diamond ring from the parents for serving the country. And I still have the diamond ring.
Wow, that's neat. And did all of your brothers make it back?
Yes, we all came back.
Did they get out about the same time, or?
No, maybe a few months before I did. After VE Day, I think the brother that was in the POW, he came out first. Well, second, after my oldest brother. Then he was mustered out, and then followed by my bombardier brother, and then I was the last one to be discharged.
Your brother that was the POW. Tell us a little bit about him that you know.
Well, he was on his last mission, and then he was shot down, I believe, over Belgium. And the crew bailed out. They lost the bombardier. They couldn't find him. The rest of the crew were captured, and he was for about a year, I believe.
Wow. And was he taken back to Germany or held in Poland?
He was in Germany when he was freed.
Do you talk about it?
No, not much. We don't.
Where are your brothers?
We all lived in Phoenix. My oldest brother passed away, the family lived in Phoenix.
But you went to Los Angeles then to go to school?
Yes. I was gonna go to school, and then I finished high school there, and then I got into the dry goods store, worked for the dry goods company. Then went back to Phoenix.
Any particular reason for going to Los Angeles, or?
Well, at that time, to continue my goal of be a mechanic, I was going to enroll in a diesel school. At that time, the Los Angeles offered a school in diesel mechanics, and my goal was to learn diesel mechanic and then go to Schenectady in New York to work on the trains. So that's my mechanical goal. In the meantime, I had something to do, so I got a job in this clothing store. Then after I got started, I forgot about the mechanical and stayed with the clothing store. And then after I quit that, I went back to Phoenix and worked in the grocery store.
Did you have a family?
Yes.
Where did you meet your wife?
Met my wife in Hong Kong. I was visiting Hong Kong and stayed with my cousin. And my cousin married my wife's cousin. That time we didn't know. Then she came and visited her cousin, and then we met and found out that we were all cousins. And later on, after we were married, we found out that our mothers went to school together in China, in the village. So it's a small world.
Yeah. And when you say you met her in Hong Kong, you went back there
To visit.
to visit.
Right.
Is Hong Kong? What's the relationship with Hong Kong and
Mainland China. It was still under the British rule, Hong Kong. As a matter of fact, that's a port of debarkation from mainland. All the ships anchored in Hong Kong, or most of the planes that fly out of Hong Kong.
Could you get into other parts of China during that time?
No.
So
It's hard, let's say. Right after the war, the communists did not take over until 1949. But still, there's some, no problem getting through.
Did you have family that stayed under the communist?
Yes, I have some cousins in the village.
Do you have contact with them?
Yes. Yeah, I have a cousin now that moved to Hong Kong, and then have some grandnephews that's in the village. But our immediate family are in the United States.
So when you met your wife in Hong Kong, how did that come about?
Just two young people got together and walked the streets and took in the sights, and then we got married. I stayed in Hong Kong about 7 or 8 months, waited for a visa to come through, then we came back together.
Okay. And when was this? When were you married?
Back in 1955.
And what was her name?
Louise Ma Ong. And as a matter of fact, we're going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary this December.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I will be celebrating my 80th birthday in August.
Well, also congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
That's neat. What about your family?
We have 2 boys, 2 sons. The older one, he owns a beauty salon. He and his wife operates the main attraction in Phoenix.
What's his name?
His name is Kendall, and his wife's name is Beata. And they operate the beauty salon in Phoenix. And they have 2 boys. The 19-year-old is named Addison, and the 14-year-old is Dylan. They are with us today in the...
Oh, good.
in the
Okay,
troop.
they're the ones we met
Right,
out.
yes.
Okay, that's nice. Okay.
Our younger son, his name is Randall. He works for Intel in Chandler, Arizona. And he has a boy and a girl.
So you have 4 grandchildren,
4
and you
grandchildren.
get to see them
Oh, yes.
quite often. And you said when you came back to Phoenix with your wife, you went back into the grocery business, or you?
No, as a matter of fact, back then, our family operated a bowling alley
Mm.
in Phoenix.
Mhm.
We built a 24-lane bowling alley. At that time, was the largest in the city.
Mhm.
We built it and operated it for a few years, and then we sold it.
Mhm.
Then I went into the grocery business again.
Mhm. Was your father still in the grocery business during
No,
this
he
time?
retired during the war.
Mm.
As the Chinese, most Oriental, they're male, interest.
Mhm.
So when you have 4 out of 5 boys go in the military, he was just disillusioned. He didn't feel like he wanted to work. He just sat and wait for the war to end.
Mm.
So he got out of the grocery business and just took it easy and wait for the war to end.
Mhm.
Wait for us to come back.
Mhm.
Then after we came back, he helped set us up in the business.
Mhm.
So at one time, we all operated our own grocery stores.
Mhm. In the Phoenix
Phoenix,
area.
right. Mhm.
And did you go? Was the bowling alley a joint effort with some of them, or?
No, with the family,
Mhm.
our immediate family.
Mhm.
Yes, by that time we were pretty much out of the grocery business, so we
Mhm.
got interest. That's when the bowling was
Mhm.
on the boom then.
Mhm.
It was growing business.
And after the bowling alley, what did you do?
As I said, went back to operating a grocery.
Mhm.
After that, then I got on with the, no, I take that back. After the bowling alley, I went to work for the state.
Mhm.
I was at the state highways department for 30 years.
Mhm.
I retired from there
Mhm.
back in '88. And my wife went to work in electronics. She was with the Motorola and Intel.
Mhm.
And she put in quite a few years.
Mhm.
And we're both retired.
Is the bowling alley still there? Do you know?
No, it's been taken over and dismantled. And, because
Any of the grocery stores still exist?
there's still a lot of grocery stores, but our family's out of the grocery business.
But do you know if any of those stores that you used to operate, are they still there, or do you know?
The stores are still there,
Mhm.
yes. Taken over by different people or sometimes converted into other businesses.
And when you retired then in 1988, that was from working for the state.
Right.
Was that still in Phoenix?
Yes.
How did you happen? And are you still in that area?
Yes. We live right in the border, right next to Phoenix,
Mhm.
the Scottsdale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Retirement community type of area, or just a residential?
Residential.
Mm-hmm. And you're over here visiting?
Yes. We're visiting the Lawrence Welks Oasis.
Uh-huh.
And our older son said, let's go take a look at the Air Museum here. It's close by, so
Well, we're
Yes, sir.
certainly glad you did.
we really enjoyed it.
And I appreciate your thoughts on your military service, and we certainly are privileged to have talked to you. Is there anything else you'd like to say or like to tell us?
No, I thought this museum is wonderful and brings back a lot of memories. And I think it's good for the young people, the coming generation, to get more into the history
Mm-hmm.
of the military. Not necessarily the Air Force, but overall, the history of the military.
So, and that kind of leads to a question about, you talk to your sons about your service or service in general, or?
Oh, don't, volunteer much. Sometimes certain subject comes up, it touches on the military. But don't come out and advertise it. I did this, I did
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
They ask questions, I answer.
Mhm.
Because during the war years, there were good times and bad times,
Mhm.
sad times and happy times.
Mhm.
So,
And I'm sure there are things you experienced that are painful to recall.
yes, sir.
In reading things like Tom Brokaw's work about the Greatest Generation, do you have a sense of that?
The Second World War.
Yeah, that there was something special about that group of people, or was it just the circumstances?
I think circumstances made that generation.
Mm-hmm.
See, we were attacked, so the whole country come together, first for the survival, and then for the freedom of the whole world.
Mhm.
So we thought.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all very patriotic. We had a purpose, had a goal,
Mm-hmm.
and we did our part.
Mm-hmm.
We got off to a poor start because we weren't that prepared, contrary to what everybody
Mhm.
said.
Yeah.
We weren't prepared.
Mm-hmm.
But we came out of it and found out that we could gel together and became a great nation.
Mm-hmm.
And we pray that it will continue
We certainly
in that
do.
vein.
One thing I didn't ask you, were you wounded or injured in any way?
No, sir, I was not. I
any
was
of your
very
brothers?
Fortunate. My the POW, he was the one in the leg.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. He had a flak in his leg, and
Mhm.
that's all. Otherwise, we're very fortunate.
I guess so. Well, Frank, it was a privilege to talk to you, and I appreciate you taking the time to tell us
Thank
your
you, sir.
story.
That's
And I'm very grateful to you.
my
Thank you.